Russian-occupied Crimea has become a new flashpoint in the war with Ukraine. Fresh satellite images show devastation from explosions 2 days ago at a Russian airbase in the peninsula. The base suffered extensive fire damage and at least 8 warplanes were destroyed. The base's runway appears to be intact. It's still unconfirmed what caused this blast. Russia says the explosions were accidental. Ukraine has not publicly claimed responsibility. 1 person was reportedly killed and 14 injured. Meanwhile, both Ukrainian and Russian forces appear to be stuck in a deadlock at the front lines in the southern Kherson region. Kyiv says it is preparing to recapture it. While Russia has reinforced the Kherson region, Ukraine hopes the U.S. rocket systems, which arrived last month, could boost their chances. An international donor conference organized by 3 countries is also underway in Copenhagen. Discussion will cover long-term backing for Ukraine. Denmark and Britain are amongst those who have pledged more military and financial aid. Well, the latest, Philip Crowther joins us from Lviv. Philip, evidence of the extent of the damage at that Russian airbase in Crimea from satellite imagery. But why are we still unclear of the cause of the blast?
Well, what you need is somebody to take responsibility for something like that, and that has not yet been publicly or explicitly done by, one would have to presume at this point, the Ukrainian military. It has its own assessment. The Ukrainian Air Force, in fact, says that 9 Russian warplanes were destroyed on that airfield on the Crimean peninsula. Now, what Russia, though, is saying is that it is not acknowledging either the destruction of planes or that there was an attack in the first place. But as you mentioned, there is now satellite imagery available from several companies that provide these images from just before those explosions happened and just thereafter. And those images show at least 7 planes entirely destroyed and possibly quite a few others that got damaged as well. The Ukrainian military is not saying so publicly, but independently, there are some Ukrainian officials who are speaking to the media and are quite proud of what they believe the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to do. Because if this was indeed a Ukrainian attack on a Russian airfield on the Crimean Peninsula, it was a long way away from any fixed Ukrainian positions. This is over 200 kilometers away from an actual front line between Ukrainian and Russian forces. So there is still a lot to be found out about this. The Ukrainian people, I think we can say quite clearly, are celebrating this, the fact that the Ukrainian military might have been able to attack a target that was so far away. Question still remains as to how Ukraine might have been able to do this. Were these anti-ship missiles that were adapted, that were used for a target on the ground? We simply don't know at this point. There is still plenty to be found out, but if nobody takes responsibility explicitly, then we can't say clearly who might have been responsible.
Oh, Philip, Ukraine's forces struggling to retake Kherson, as you mentioned earlier, that has been fought to a standstill. Given what is happening on either side, how do you see that battle tipping in the immediate future, in the days ahead?
Well, it's particularly important what happens there over the next few days and indeed weeks, because the Kherson region has been one that there have been announcements made essentially by the Ukrainian military that it will be trying to get a lot of it back under its control during a major counteroffensive. Now, I don't think one can say at this point that that counteroffensive is truly taking place, though the Ukrainian military has been able to move into that direction toward the city of Kherson, in the Kherson region, that's in the south of the country, and retake some villages and towns, dozens in fact. But what we're seeing right now more than anything is a preparation for what might be coming next if there is to be a Ukrainian counteroffensive, because Ukraine has been preparing for this, has been bringing hardware and soldiers into this area, and Russia has also been doing exactly the same. Now, both sides most likely trying to get each other's attention away from other fronts, because there is, of course, the Donbass region that Russia has stated clearly it wants to get entirely under its control in the east and has so far failed to do. We will now see, most likely over the next few weeks, how far those respective forces can be stretched. In the meantime, what Ukraine is doing is it's asking for more weapons and more money for its military. Of course, this is something that Ukraine and its presidency have done from before Russia's invasion even beginning at the end of February. And this time there is, in fact, a conference of defense leaders, mainly from Northern Europe, happening in Copenhagen in Denmark. It was addressed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It is being attended by the Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov. And what Ukraine has already received from there is a promise from the United Kingdom that it will be sending more weapons systems, more medium-range, multiple-launch rocket systems to Ukraine. These and guided missiles that come with them. These give Ukraine the possibility to reach targets that are around 80 kilometers away, so not more than anything it has right now. But Ukrainian soldiers have been receiving training in the United Kingdom already on these systems, and they are believed to be key in how Ukraine has been able to stem some of those Russian attacks in the east and indeed in the south of the country as well. With that training ongoing in the United Kingdom, we expect there to be, of course, hundreds and indeed possibly thousands of Ukrainian soldiers who will be able to use those systems in the future. Now, I mentioned the Ukrainian Defense Minister, Oleksiy Reznikov. He spoke in person in Copenhagen at that conference of defense ministers and defense leaders. And he said clearly what, in his view, Ukraine needs more than anything is more fighter jets. There have been no promises from anybody, any of those members, those countries at that conference, that they might be able to give Ukraine fighter jets in the future.
And thanks for covering all those angles for us. Philip Crowther reporting live there from Lviv.